Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien. Today, Thursday, June 9th, 2022. And today I want to do a special commentary for you on what you call presidents. Specifically, Roe v. Wade and presidents. So here we go. Well, Americans, here it is, June 9th. For the next 21 days, the Supreme Court's going to finish their term for this year on June 30th. And on that day, and I think they'll wait till that day, they'll announce the ruling that everybody's been anticipating with open hatred here on Roe versus Wade, with a 5-4 decision saying, we overturn Roe versus Wade. That is a significant decision because it's the first time that the Supreme Court is going to overturn one of its rulings. And it's wrong with specifically Justice Thomas and Justice Kavanaugh, both saying that precedence is something that you have to do, and sometimes it's wrong. Well, the way they said it, and the way it was done is two different things. Whoever leaked that little information to the public is also wrong. Let me put history and tell you, Americans, your own history, which you don't seem to learn in your high schools and education. There's been only one overturn of your three branches of government. Actually, two. Okay? The first one is your 18th Amendment from the Congress. It was adopted in 1920, overturned by the 23rd Amendment in 1933. That is a clear case of them trying to right a wrong. And for you Japanese Americans and you African Americans, the internment camp of the Japanese and what the American government, especially the Army, would say today was we had to do it to save them from ourselves. That people would attack and kill Japanese citizens if we didn't intern them in camps. By President Roosevelt's order, Executive Order 9066. Well, you should have done the same thing to the Italians and Germans. But there wasn't the same hatred. And how would you say, looked upon as lower class savages. What the Americans then and some do today to different people of Asian and Latin descent. And some white supremacists view African Americans as savages because of the way you look and because of the way they acted. Culture was a little different than yours, therefore you're savage. Your ancestors, whether Spanish, British, Portuguese, or French, were savages also. You see what I mean, Americans? That is a bad way of thinking. And Executive Order 9066 was finally overturned by President Gerald R. Ford in 1976. Something they don't tell you in your history books. That he overturned a wrong. Those are the only two instances in your history where two different bodies of your three bodies, that's executive, legislative, and judiciary, found themselves looking at something that should not have been there. You in the Supreme Court are different than the other two because you are supposed to interpret the laws and the Constitution of the United States and keep the other two in balance. But nobody keeps you in balance. And you can't use that argument that, my decisions here were overturned by the Congress or executive orders of the president, right? Because you have gone by and said executive orders, especially the executive orders that Roosevelt did during the Depression, you overturned a lot of those. Why didn't you overturn Social Security? You could have. But you overturned the WPA, the CCP, and all others. You didn't overturn the TVA Authority Supreme Court. Why not? And when I was in high school, in your Panama Canal Zone, Balboa High School, one of my history teachers, and I had two of them, husband and wife, Joe and Ann Norton, 7th and 10th grade. And they both told me, because I asked them, why is your system so messed up? And in 7th grade, Mrs. Norton told me, how do you know our system is so messed up? And I explained to her, and she says, oh my God, I never realized that. Because you went back, and I went back and spent months at your Library of Congress. And that's how I know you're his system. And it sucks, whether you like it or not. When the people in the Supreme Court and people outside the court who have agendas tell you Americans, the Dred Scott decision was superseded by the 14th Amendment. That's not the case. The 14th Amendment was done after the Civil War with no regards to the Dred Scott decision. It was done for political reasons by the radical Republicans. Dred Scott decision still exists and still in force. Same as the Plessy versus Ferguson decision. And the Supreme Court itself has taken that 14th Amendment, and this Americans, especially African Americans, listen to this closely. The Supreme Court, whether who was in charge as a Chief Justice, has taken this 14th Amendment and watered it down. That's why you got Plessy versus Ferguson, because of the decisions that came before it, which watered it down to a certain extent that they could live with segregation. And they could live with hatred. They could live with being derogatory to a person, calling you a nigger, and using other inflammatory words because of the way they diluted the 14th Amendment. Okay? So when you denigrate a person and you degrade the person to a certain extent that he doesn't exist, that is looking at the 14th Amendment through the Dred Scott decision. You understand me, Americans? Whether you're white, whether you're black, whether you're Asians, whatever you are. This is what happened. And Plessy versus Ferguson confirmed it in 1896. Then came some Chief Justices in the 20th century and presidents like Theodore Roosevelt that didn't like the way America was going with the robber barons, as you called John D. Rockefeller, who was controlling the government, like J.P. Morgan, who controlled the government and actually bailed it out twice. They don't tell you that in history, do they? They bailed it out once in the crash of 1907, which was worse than the crash of 1929 or 2008. That was a depression that the government almost never made it through without J.P. Morgan's loan. And it took progressives like Theodore Roosevelt to look at that. He tried to eliminate the problem by getting John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil to be broken apart into different companies. Didn't work because the company's back at it again, and ExxonMobil is still there. And the net result of trying to break up Standard Oil was, hey, John D. Rockefeller was more rich than he was before. So it didn't work that way, did it? But in that time, the Chief Justices of the Supreme Court looked at the 14th Amendment as it was, and they turned it the other way. Started making the 14th Amendment more powerful, which resulted in decisions after decisions in the 20th century, culminating with the Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954 and Roe versus Wade in 1973. Now today's Republican-backed justices are looking at this, and they want to go back to watering down the 14th and bringing back the Plessy versus Ferguson and the Dred Scott decision, which they have never affirmed and said to themselves. The court here views that the decision back in 1857 was not in a humane sense attributed to a government like the United States. Therefore, we submit our decision to reverse Plessy versus Ferguson and the Dred Scott decision. That is the way to do it, not reversing Roe versus Wade like they're trying to do here. They should do another decision and saying Roe versus Wade has precedence. A woman should have a right to choose. Life, we cannot determine when life is. So for our purposes, we have to determine when life is on this planet for this human society, and hopefully other human societies on this planet or adopt your decisions like you've done before. This is your favorite alien saying to you Americans, do you understand what I mean with that 5-4 decision coming up with Roe versus Wade? It's going to disintegrate your country because you don't have any doctrine, you don't have any prime directives for your three bodies of government to go with. They've gone their own separate ways, and it's caused helter-skelter. Until you change that, you might as well call yourself extinct. Good day.